around about, well, 3 and a bit years ago, just after my first daughter was born.
It's okay.
We'll get this going, but I'll just tell you anyway. There were a whole bunch of really negative headlines in the press about breastfeeding by one of our lovely politicians called Breastfeeding Mothers Exhibitionists. And then he called us voyeurists, so I don't think he really understood what he was talking about. Clearly didn't understand what he was talking about. So there was a lot of negative headlines, a lot of negative press about women being told to feed in bathrooms, or, well, sure, why can't you just express and feed the baby? Because that's so easy to do. And so with all the kind of negative press and headlines, and then in the haze of having a newborn baby, I thought, well, no, I can't just sit around and accept this. So we started Breastival, and see if I can get this to play. Just is a wee video. Oh yes, it will play. Here we go.
I love it.
So that's, oh, there we go. There we go. So that was the start of Breastival, and that was really why it started. Myself and Jenny met each other at a breastfeeding support group, and we thought, well, sure, we'll just do something. And we thought we'd start off a bit small. We recently came up with this as our kind of mission statement, is to make breastfeeding culturally normal in Northern Ireland again. There's so many amazing organisations that do work on support. We've got the Sure Starts that do great work. You know, all of our hospitals are baby friendly accredited. You know, there's all of those structural things that are in place, but there's nothing that does the kind of thing that we do, which is about public perceptions and about making breastfeeding normal again. We're mum led, we don't get paid, we're knackered. We try to be creative, we try to be inclusive, and we try to make breastfeeding support as fun as possible. So we started off in City Hall in the first year in 2016. We did a big latch on, which is an event, a global event where women all around the world get together at 10:30 local time and feed their babies. Count how many babies and mums are feeding, and submit to kind of a global count around the world. So we started off with 43 people and 1 dog. Then the following year, the MAC, we had 134 mums feeding 136 children, and then we've just grown. We thought the first year at the MAC we might get maybe 150 people. We had to close our list at 500, and we had another 150 people on the waiting list, and that was the first year. So every year we've just had to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And this year we had, I think, 1,800 people register for tickets. We're a free event, so we get about 50% of people actually show up, so we rely on half the people not coming. But that's the amount of people that want to come to an event like Breastival, because there's nothing else like it. And a typical day at Breastival, last year we had 1,800 people, or this year we had 1,800 people register to attend. We have 40 volunteers, 27 exhibitors, 11 talks, 9 sets of workshops, 8 chats, 6 politicians, 3 journalists, 2 social media managers, 2 artists, 2 flash mobs, 1 comedian, 4 very tired board members. It's not too early for Christmas. So we have topics that we cover in our talks and in our kind of more informal chats, they're suggested to us by the breastfeeding community, mostly in Breastfeeding Northern Ireland Facebook group and a couple of other groups, and then we curate and we make sure that we try to include as many local researchers as we possibly can. As a researcher myself, I really want to include as much research as possible, and Marlene joined us this year, and Simon Cameron was there this year. Victoria Sims came and presented a talk on baby brain development. So we don't just cover breastfeeding, we cover topics that people are interested in, that new parents want to hear about. The baby brain development talk in particular had loads and loads of dads at it, so I think it's really important to have that content that's not just about boobs, because the dads think, oh well, we can't really go to that because that's about boobs and that's for the women's. So if we have other content, it means that partners feel like, oh yeah, this is for me as well, and we all know that partners are really important in supporting breastfeeding. So we also have a few side projects. I'll not play this whole thing, but I'll just play a little bit of it and talk over it. So the first year at the MAC, we invited local women to submit photographs of themselves feeding, because as part of this idea that breastfeeding in public isn't normal because we don't see it. So we thought, well, if we see it, then it becomes more normal, and the more you're exposed to it, it's just an everyday part of life. And like these pictures demonstrate that, oh, it's gone again. It is just an everyday part of life. It's not like the images often that we see of women breastfeeding are these really idealised, wearing a white shirt on a white sofa, because what parent of a newborn has white ironed shirts? And so we wanted to demonstrate that breastfeeding is just a part of everyday life, and that it just what it looks like. And so that was how More Than Milk started, and then we got more and more submissions, and so we have sent the exhibition to Antrim Area Hospital. It was there for a few months before Breastival in 2018. It's now in the Royal Maternity Hospital on display. And we're hoping to expand that to some more of the maternity hospitals, have them in antenatal waiting areas, basically have as many images of mums feeding wherever we can get them, just to make it normal. So as a piece of research, it would be really nice if somebody would like to evaluate the impact of that for us. We also that's okay, we can skip past that one. Okay. I know you're all dying to see it probably, but you can go to our website and see all our videos there. So the other thing that we've been doing, if we go here, so on the side I also set up this community of practice, and the idea behind that is that it's just an open forum for people who are interested in breastfeeding and breastfeeding research, but also activism, or lactivism as people sometimes like to say. And we've done a few different events, usually just when I can strong arm somebody into talking to us. And we've also acted as impact partner for a couple of research bids. So we're very open to doing that for any other researchers that are interested in working with an organisation that is of the community and for the community. So this one here is, we had Dr. Claire Patton, who spoke to us about breastfeeding from a human rights perspective. As a result of that talk, she's been invited to speak at the World Health Organization. So Nigel Rawlins happened to see that she was talking when we were posting about it on Twitter, and he contacted us and invited her to. So she's going over to speak to WHO, and the history of breastfeeding. That's a grant application that's been submitted, and we're waiting to hear back on that one from Dr. Niamh Cullen. So she spoke to us, and she found the experience really useful by coming to the community of practice, because it's researchers, but it's also mums, it's healthcare professionals, it's politicians, that she was able to get feedback on her grant proposal before she submitted it, and change things and move things around as a result of that feedback. So it's a kind of a positive environment, so that you get sort of a lot of different perspectives, not just kind of researchers talking to each other, which is what I mostly do in my job. We have also got another project called the Letdown, that's myself and Dr. Aoife McGrath. What we wanted to do was use an arts-based approach to communicate research about breastfeeding, because we know that, and from listening to just the end of Grania there, that breastfeeding is a very, very emotive topic, and sometimes it can be a very difficult topic to talk about without people becoming very defensive. And so what we wanted to do was be able to introduce the concept of breastfeeding and what the experience of breastfeeding is like for women, but strip away the narrative and strip away the words. So myself and Aoife worked together. I didn't do any of the dancing. What I did was contacted Maria Heron, who had very kindly gave us the transcripts from research that she had done, and she had done interviews with women about their experiences of breastfeeding in the early days and their experience of receiving or not receiving very good support. And then two performers worked together, experienced performers, both with very different experiences of breastfeeding themselves as mothers, and came up with this performance piece. So it's a 20-minute piece. It's very difficult to describe what it is, but it allows the audience to connect with the experience of breastfeeding without feeling threatened. So you're not being told it's the best thing to do, or you're not being made to feel bad for either doing it or not doing it or whatever. It's just the piece is presented as is, and people can kind of come to it and take from it what they want. And part of the research then is that we ask audiences about their reactions to the piece, and what we found really clearly was that regardless of people's experience, so we had some people in the audience that had really, really negative experiences, and were like, there was one quote that was, "I was a survivor of breastfeeding and I quit after 2 weeks." That she had a really, really negative experience and was really happy that she had stopped, but really, really enjoyed the piece, seeing the representation of how difficult it can be. So the piece kind of follows this arc where it starts off being quite a negative experience for the performers, and then it kind of changes to when they find the right support, and then it's kind of happy at the end, ish. So generally, the audience reaction is this feeling of relief and gratitude and appreciation for women's efforts, regardless of what the breastfeeding experience is. And we think that it's a powerful way to allow people to engage in the topic of breastfeeding and start those conversations without that kind of personally threatening feeling that you get from a lot of the information that you're given. If you're given factual information, sometimes that can feel threatening, whereas this piece allows that the words to be stripped away and people can connect with it on an emotional level. So we're hoping that we can work to look to maybe use the piece as a starting point for sort of education and reflective practice. What else have we got? So far in terms of research impact, some of the activities that we've had, we've been awarded Breastfeeding Champions of the Year this year. We have 2 Northern Ireland MPs now sit on the all-party parliamentary group on infant feeding, which was somebody had cornered one of the politicians at Breastival the previous year, and she then committed, and then we told the newspapers that she committed to attending, so she then had to attend. Breastfeeding Berkshire replicated our More Than Milk project in their local area. Claire Patton has been invited to speak in the World Health Organization. We've supported 2 research funding bids as impact partner. The Letdown performance piece has been invited to a number of international festivals already. And we also have events in the Northern Ireland Human Rights Festival, Science Festival, Being Human Festival, International Women's Day, essentially trying to get content about breastfeeding into places where you wouldn't normally see it. So taking it outside of maternity care or research conversations and putting it into public spaces and festivals, and, you know, sure, why not? You know, we have festivals about food and music, why not boobs and feeding? And because I work in Queen's, I'm also making sure that Queen's implement a proper policy on breastfeeding and returning to work, and I might start targeting other universities soon too. Yeah, that's kind of me. We're done, and he's still